So welcome everyone. Today we will be talking about how to enhance BAME students' a sense of belonging and engagement. To begin with, Sabia is going to give a short introduction on what happened last week in regards to the students' conference, which focused about which focused on navigating through life as a BAME student. It was a very, very successful event, and it was great for those that joined last week as well.
Thanks, Guerdine. I couldn't find my unmute button for a moment there. Did you also want to mention the outline of the conference before, or do you want me to start with last week's conference first?
Okay, so today's focus will be on Sticky Campus, which Declan Scully will introduce to everyone. Then shortly after, I will introduce my research project, which focuses on sense of belonging and social engagement. Then we've got another speaker, Apollo, who will also present his research project, which focuses on developing students' network to enhance the students' experience. We've got breakout room, which will allow us to have a discussion. And then after the breakout room, we'll have a Q&A.
So just in terms of last week's Sticky Campus student-facing conference, so we delivered that on Wednesday for an hour and a half, and as Guerdine has mentioned, it was a really successful event. In total, we had, although people were kind of coming in like waves and going out, there was about 47 students and staff members who attended last week. So it allowed for a really kind of successful conversation to take place as well, and lots of learnings which were taken away from it, which hopefully we'll be able to share with you through the conference today. A lot of that was the result of Guerdine and Apollo's work, the research that they've done. So I won't, go into talking about that. But in terms of our takeaway points, they were really kind of I think important messages, both from the students' perspective and the staff's perspective, about what we could do together to enhance the experience for Black and ethnic minority students and staff members as well. And what we're hoping for today is, as your staff taking part, that we can look to find pathways as to how we can enhance that experience. What can we do in our own departments and in our areas as well to carry out that work? So, do feel free to put comments into the chat, and when we go into our breakout rooms, to expand on, some of the areas that you're currently working on or you'd like to maybe collaborate on in the future. I think in terms of our the student conference last week, it was fantastic to hear from Daniel Odorende, who is a motivational speaker, and Dialectic D, who is a poet, and having that variety of voices at the conference last week allowed for a really fruitful discussion to take place, which highlighted, some of the great work that is happening at Roehampton, but actually, that we've got lots to learn from across the educational sector, because there's some good practice in other universities as well. So there's a lot of discussion, not just about Roehampton, but what's happening across the sector too. So if you've got experiences that you'd like to share from that perspective today too, please do so as well. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Declan, who's going to tell us a little bit more about Sticky Campus research. And so just over to Declan.
Hi everyone. Thanks very much for your support coming today. And I just wanted to spend 1 minute just setting the context of this event in a wider context. This event is all about partnerships, and if there's one lesson I would like everybody to take away, quite apart from about understanding what the Sticky Campus is about, is to understand the value of treating students as partners on research, and also creating a situation where they can progress from something which starts as a relatively small idea and gets as far as student conferences. And this wouldn't have happened without a considerable amount of support. In the business school, I'd like to thank Sunita, who has been supporting us from day one. But also, I think this is also about partnership with people such as Southlands. This is a partnership between the business school and Southlands. And what this demonstrates is that we are in a situation where we can hold events which are thought-provoking with students helping provide research, and more importantly, it's an opportunity to hear the student voice, to understand their unique perspective. So I would like everybody to hold those thoughts and go back to wherever they're doing afterwards and think about, how can I involve students more in my research? How can I perhaps work to extend, say, a dissertation module to have a conference as well? How can we get external experts coming on board and working along our students as well? So I'd like you to hold those thoughts. Quickly, the idea of the sticky campus is that we as universities have to focus not just on in-classroom activities, but we also have to focus on outside classroom activities when we're looking to build engagement and belonging. And when we first spoke to Christopher and Gulliver about organizing a research project, you know, this was just before COVID took off. So we were very much looking to how we could improve the physical environment. Of course, things moved on, and this piece of research is very much something that got carried out in the COVID era. So I think you will find it interesting. There's some very insightful content, but it does still leave us to think about the wider questions it raises about how we move forward to boost belonging and engagement. And with that in mind, again, our purpose all along has been to provoke a conversation, to get people talking about how do we improve the situation, particularly of our BAME community, but also the wider issue about improving the sense of belonging and engagement among our students. So with those words, I will just pass back to Sabia to lead into the conference itself. So thank you once again for your support, everyone.
Thanks, Declan. It's really helpful. So really over to Guerdine and Apollo to take the lead. So do you want to start, Guerdine? Is this okay if I move to the next slide as well?
That's fine. Hello, everyone. So I know some of the attendees today may have taught me within the last 4 years, but I'm just going to give a brief introduction of myself. My name is Guerdine Zampangi. I am a business management graduate. I've spent the last 4 years at Roehampton studying business, and I'm currently in my final year doing my postgrad in global financial management. In the past, I've done research on the challenges for BAME females in the business industry. And this year, my project focused on sense of belonging and social engagement for BAME students. So my project, the purpose of my project was to understand how we can make BAME students who commute to Roehampton feel more included, and most importantly, like improving the sense of belonging and social engagement. My research question that I posed was, does the University of Roehampton social environment have an impact on commuting students' sense of belonging and engagement in the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic community? I think to begin with, it's important we understand the keywords that I'll be talking about thoroughly today, which are BAME, sense of belonging, and social engagement. So BAME is a concept. It's very difficult to understand and define BAME because it basically means other than white. So while studying my project, I found out that students didn't really want to be defined as BAME, as the acronym, like they didn't find the acronym, it fit them and who they felt like they were. So yeah. Sense of belonging. Sense of belonging can be defined as the feeling, belief, and expectation that one fits in a group and has a place there, a feeling of acceptance by a group and willingness to sacrifice for a group. And this was defined by Macmillan and Chavis. Social engagement. Social engagement is a concept of referring to an individual, collective, or institutional relation or involvement with some elements of society, particularly communities. So I'm just going to begin by giving some background content. We've understood today the keywords, which are BAME, sense of belonging, and social engagement. So it's important we look at the society that BAME students operate in and live in. So racial inequality in the UK in 2020, we've seen so much events spark up. We've seen so many tragic events as well that have occurred. So to begin with, these were just the key highlights of 2020. So the Black Lives Matter movement, the police brutality and the killing of George Floyd, a journalist on BBC says a racial slur. And then recently there was Meghan Markle, there was Stop the Hate with the Asian community. The racial inequalities display what BAME people have to go through on a day-to-day basis, not just racism, but also microaggression. Racial inequality in education. The racial inequality in education is a deep-rooted challenge that has been institutionalized. For example, Black children in primary school and secondary school are 3 times more likely to be excluded. The lack of BAME representation in senior and prominent positions in the educational system. The BAME attainment gap was 13% between 2017 and 2018. And I believe the racial inequality in education has an interrelationship with the ethnicity pay gap. My research methodology, how I conducted my research methodology, it was a qualitative research approach. The qualitative method allowed me to understand the students' lived experiences. And due to the pandemic, I was only able to get 7 in-depth semi-structured interviews, which I was actually quite grateful for. And these interviews allowed me to recognize the key patterns which were formed into themes. So from my methodology, from my interviews, there was many key themes that emerged. However, I'm just going to be talking about the 5 today because I feel like it's very relevant. So one of the key findings was often BAME students have other important responsibilities. For example, they are parents, they have jobs. Coming to uni is not just their main focus. The second finding was the financial decisions. I found that in my study, BAME students that took part in my interview stated financially how challenging uni can be, the difficulties they have with finance. And the third finding that emerged from my study was the space and new buildings of the University of Roehampton. So for example, we have libraries, recently we have the new campus that was built on the Queen's Building. They felt that these new buildings encouraged them to come because it was modern, and they felt that the designs of the space are very open planned and increased conversation and communication. Another finding was the lack of BAME representation in senior positions and also teachers. They felt that not many people look like them, so they were unable to relate in some instance. And another important finding was comfortability. Comfortability provides a sense of belonging. As well as finding these findings, throughout my methodology, I ensured that I was able to also provide recommendations. And these were the 5 recommendations that were completed. So the first recommendation was provide all BAME students with a student wellbeing officer, and this will allow them to speak to someone to get that emotional support. The second recommendation was provide financial support for those students in need, for example, like grants, loans, bursaries that can just help the students get by week to week, really. The third recommendation was develop virtual events, student events that allow students to connect. For example, like the one we did last week, we had so much positive feedback that the students were able to come on a platform and talk and engage and really just be themselves unapologetically. The fourth recommendation was advance the online teaching to make it more effective. With the transition of the pandemic, we all had to adjust to the changes rapidly, and a lot of the students found that it was twice as harder to concentrate at home, to be at home, and to engage in the teaching. And the final recommendation is establish a racial diverse, strong leadership. So my question for the audience is today, what do you think we can do to enhance a sense of belonging and social engagement for BAME students? if you could just jot your answers in the chat, that would be absolutely great. We'll just give it a minute or two. Yeah, and now I will be passing over to Apollo, who will explain his research.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Apollo. I'm just similar to Guerdine. I'm a Roehampton student. I've been at the university for 4 years and a bit more. I'm currently studying global financial management. I'm a colleague of Guerdine's. So next slide, please. So my project was titled Developing Students' Networks to Enhance the Student Experience. So originally I had more of a focus on things like online learning, but for the purpose of this conference, I'm going to speak about the student experience from a more general perspective, focusing on key themes such as creating a sense of belonging and student engagement, and also talking about student networking. Just to give you a background, the clients for my project were Susanna Wesley Foundation and Christopher Stevens, who operate in Southlands College, and they've approved my research as it fits in with sort of their mission and their values. So student networks refer to any way in which students within the university communicate and socialize with each other and also their lecturers. And as the researcher, I think that improving the student networks through sticky campus methods is essential to student engagement and the constant progression of Roehampton as an institution. So my project was a strategic approach just to sort of identify some of the problems and maybe come up with some solutions. Also with the reviewing of some literature. Of course, due to COVID-19, we've changed to remote operation, so it's made it kind of a lot more difficult for students to engage within a lot of the events that the university offers, and for them to feel that same sense of belonging to the university that they would have if they were like coming to campus regularly as normal. Next, please. So before I had obviously a longer set of research objectives, but I've picked these as I think they're more catered to the conference, as they are more to do with sort of student networks and engagement. So my first one was to identify which student networks / services have the biggest impact on engagement. Secondly, to identify which student networks are in the highest demand for improvements. To investigate how the aspects contributing to a sticky campus were missed during the online learning period. Also, the importance of career advice and the concern for well-being. Okay. So the importance of having a sense of belonging through socializing at uni is deemed important by many professional people during the industry, such as vice chancellors and founders of design companies. So these are just a few examples, such as McGuire and Morris, vice chancellors, Dr. Sam Hall, founder of Spaces Alive. These are a few things I looked at within my literature review, just to sort of back up that my idea is relevant and is very important to universities. A student's sense of belonging and social engagement has of course been touched on by Guerdine, and just to rectify that, I think it's also very, very important that the university sees this as a sort of a high demand topic. Next, please. So for my research, I chose a different avenue. So I did surveys. So I used convenient sampling in order to gather information. So just what that is, of course, you know, is just to give surveys to people who are most easily accessed. So I gave 50 surveys out. My original plan was to have 100, but obviously due to the COVID stuff, it was a bit more difficult for me to actually get hold of people that I don't personally know. So what I did is I just used the library as my sort of space in order to find students. So I gave it out to a lot of my colleagues, people that I know on other courses, different year groups as well, and just the people that I saw in the library. The key themes for my questionnaire was how and what student networks are used and can be implemented. and also their effect on engagement. Next, please. So this is just an overview of the demographics. So of course, I looked at students from different years groups, so first, second, third year, masters, trying to get a mixture of on-campus and off-campus students as well, because I know the commuter experience is very different from the student experience for people that live on campus. Also, I got a few international students to answer the survey, male and female, and also the employment status, because that links to the career side of things, and of course students on different courses, but mainly students from the business school, as that's where I studied, and obviously I have a closer connection with a lot of students who study there. Next, please. So the first thing I looked at was what aspect of campus life did the students miss the most due to remote learning. My original hypothesis was that it would be the library, but of course, we had the e-library, which students were very, very encouraged to use. So students, based on my survey, actually missed their face-to-face learning with their lecturers the most, even more so than their peers, which was quite interesting. Next, please. So next, what I did is I looked at which student network stroke services have the biggest impact on engagement. So what I found out is that before the pandemic, so I asked students sort of before March 2020 and after March 2020 to sort of give their ratings for the different student networks. So before the pandemic, the Students' Union was the most popular, and also the societies. And after pandemic, the Student Study Support was the most popular, with like almost over 80% of students voting for that being their most important network. I think after the pandemic, the need for study support increased a lot. I can say that from a personal perspective as well, because it was just a lot more difficult to sort of engage with learning, as it was obviously done remotely. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of improvements, the careers link was the main sort of spotlight for improvement, and the aspect of it was the promotional aspect. And also the multicultural aspect of the student union was another thing that students voted for. So I think that sort of ties into that idea of the BAME community, because I think there's not as much events that go on at the university that sort of targeted at BAME students. And I know there are a lot of events that do happen, but in terms of the promotion and the awareness of them, I think it's definitely something that could improve. And I'm going to speak more about the careers after. Next slide, please. Okay, so from this, I'm not sure what's happened with the presentation, but what I sort of gathered from this was I looked at the age range of people that sort of felt that their career was affected by the pandemic. And what I found out was that sort of younger students were more worried about their career prospects due to the pandemic, whereas the older students were a bit less worried. And obviously, employed students were obviously less worried than the unemployed students, which I think is something that would have been quite clear to me from before. Next, please. So I also looked at the concern for student well-being. What I gathered from this question was mainly that the majority of international students were encouraged, and they also made use of the well-being services available from the university, and most of them rated it as very, very good. So I think that same push needs to be given to students that are local, especially at this time where well-being is just more of a concern due to obviously the pandemic and stuff. Thanks, please. So in conclusion, I think that push for student study support should be maintained and increased, with efforts to encourage students to access the support as much as possible, especially students that have started their course online due to the time of all the lockdowns and stuff. That also comes with some of my experience that I had actually working with the student engagement team within the university. A lot of students sort of told me that they didn't feel any sense of belonging to the university because they actually haven't been here much, because they've actually started their course during a lockdown. So I think those students should be targeted more. Of course, the virtual Students' Union events have been run. I think, as I said before, they just need more promotion. And I think more students need to be sort of encouraged to look at their academic, the student portal more, especially the news and events section, rather than just looking at the academic stuff. Also, the careers link is something I think needed some improvement based on the promotional bit. Obviously, there is a section that's sort of catered to BAME students, but I don't think many of them actually know about it. So I think that's something that definitely needs to be addressed, and we can talk more in the breakout room. So I'll pass back to Sabina, and we're going to have a little discussion.
Thank you, Apollo. Thank you, Apollo. Your presentation was great. We now have 10 minutes in a breakout room. You could use this opportunity to ask any questions, recommendations. So yeah, we'll be joining breakout rooms shortly. Thank you.
Thanks, Lewis.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi there, Guerdine. How are you?
Okay, I saw a bit of your recommendation. Want to say it again, please?
Yes, I mentioned that I think we should build the AGT capability so that students who identify as BAME can actually go to their AGT for support or to discuss issues.
I like that. So like a mentor.
In some way, yes, they could be mentored or provided with some additional information about support groups or services, or maybe they just need someone to talk to about the issues, BAME-related issues that they're facing. Yeah.
Great. Does anyone else in the group have any recommendations, any questions?
Just in regards to the AGTs, I would actually go outside of them purely because AGTs are being pressured on other echelons. I just heard today that maybe employability within the university will involve having specific tutors for employability. Maybe we should have specific mentors within each of the departments for our Black students or our BAME students, rather than just relying on AGTs.
Sorry, can I just add there to say, so I didn't necessarily mean to rely on, but it would be good for AGTs to have some knowledge of some of the issues that BAME students experience, just in case they present to them, that may be their first port of call. So rather than turning them away and saying, you need to go to this service or go down corridor B, at least they will have some knowledge and information to pass on to them as a kind of first port call.
No, that makes it clearer, Michelle. We're talking about upskilling AGTs. That's how I'd see it, is upskilling to inform.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. No worries.
No, I think those recommendations are great because as a student, if I had an AGT, I think my experiences would have been different. Just being able to speak to someone, my concerns, and yeah.
Can I come in here? Just, I think, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, I think Michelle's point is good. And I was, when you were presenting, I was thinking, sometimes we know that some of the challenges are there, but sometimes just the little bit of boost in confidence in these students can really make a big difference. And I've seen, people may be very good in academically, but they are not very good in asking for help, and they feel it could be probably cultural. And I can see, I can feel that myself, if I'm in a room and unless I'm asked to speak, sometimes it's very, even if I'm so old now, I still feel a little bit awkward of speaking out. So that way, I think and I strongly feel these all these students are can be pushed to achieve excellence in any aspect, and there is no difference in terms of what we can expect from this group vis-a-vis any other group. Again, I don't like to even consider a separate category. That's different how we define, but my point is about this building that confidence and we know they have great tenacity, but we need to just show that, or somehow reassure them they have that capability, and they are good enough. And to do that, I think it is not about just age. It is, I mean, they should be as there's sort of belonging, and they should be able to sort of tap into anything that and speak to anybody. And I won't say that having a BAME mentor would help, but everybody, there are a lot of non-BAME people who know these challenges, and they can help out. And it is not only that only BAME can help a BAME student, or there is no such thing that I feel is necessary. But yes, if they see a lot of these people in other different positions, of course that somehow gives them a bit of confidence to go and speak to them. But I think it is just making sure that they're giving the opportunity to speak and ask for help, and just to encourage them to do that more than what we do currently. I think that's quite important, and somehow to link it to the career services. And I think there is a lot of things that can be done in career services, which can then address a lot of these sort of insecurities, or that sort of a feeling that I don't need, I can't go, I don't think I should ask for help. But that is what I think we need to break that barrier. And so
I agree. I definitely agree. Building confidence within the students. But I'm going to talk for myself here. I'm going to give you an example. So Black history, I learned that from a white person's mouth. And I believe if I learned it from someone that looked like me, it would be more authentic. I would be able to engage and learn more about my culture. So that understanding there, was it really my history, or was it diluted or seen in a different perspective? Boosting confidence. If someone looks like me and is in a senior position, that will boost my confidence, because it gives me that chance. It shows me that someone like me got there, so I can as well. So I think boosting confidence is about reflection. It's about understanding. It's about just that racial diversity, really. I know universities, they say it, it's mandatory, but as a Black, I'm going to speak for myself again, as a Black student, did I really see people that look like me? No, I had 2 Black teachers throughout my whole time at Roehampton, and that was just, one module here and there.
Can I jump in quickly? Just a suggestion, but also a comment on that as well, if that's okay. I mean, I've been speaking to a lot of students. We use a category BAME, which I have an issue with anyway, but BAME students. And a lot of them don't engage with a lot of the voluntary roles in the university, as you point out, Guerdine, due to financial constraints. So they don't have the time to voluntarily engage in mentoring, other roles that aren't paid. So that kind of prevents them from kind of engaging fully. And this is coming from students that I've spoken to on a one-to-one basis over the last probably couple of years now. So maybe we need to review those kind of roles to actually open it up, so they don't have to choose between paid work and volunteering, so they're more involved in that. Because I think that ends up not representing our student body. So it's not just about race, but it's also about students who just can't afford to do voluntary work, as an aside. But the one thing I did want to kind of raise is from a white female perspective. So obviously in social sciences, we have to talk about race a lot within the context of the curriculum. But also I'm very well aware that coming from myself, it may not go down very well with some of my students. What gives her the right to talk about race in my history when she can not empathize at all? And I agree with that. But maybe that's something we need to look at. What can we do for white staff who actually do want to try and support and encourage and build confidence, when some of us may not feel we have the tools to equip ourselves to be able to do that effectively. So I think there's unfortunately, we don't have control of the recruitment process. So sometimes you have to work within the confinements of what we have, which is not a very diverse academic body, and maybe kind of think about what the university can do to kind of support staff who actually are on board and want to support non-white students kind of progress and feel confident.
Thank you, Nicola. I'm just gonna, again, I'm going to talk for myself. As a BAME student, while studying for the last 4 years, getting my undergrad and postgrad, I had to have 2 part-time jobs to support me throughout my time. And if the opportunity had arisen at university where I could work for the university, also study, build my career, make the relevant connections, I wouldn't have been so exhausted. I didn't really have time to stay on campus and engage, because after my lessons, I had to rush back to work and come back. So that did play an impact on sense of belonging. And yes, if the university did review them roles and understand it shouldn't be voluntary because people have bills to pay, you know, I agree. Yeah, you can speak.
I was just thinking in terms of students communicating with each other, because it's really important to get a community, and we've always struggled. How do we develop a community with on-campus and off-campus students? And that's obviously disproportionate with BAME students because more of them are going to be off-campus commuting in. So in terms of suggestions, or I don't know if anything goes on with students at the moment, obviously you use social media a lot, and I know students individually have their own WhatsApp groups. We know students aren't going to engage on Moodle and the devices that we give them. But one of the students is starting to use Discord. I don't know, are there any platforms that students have organically grown themselves and are communicating on? Are there any kinds of platforms that we can develop for students to communicate amongst themselves? Because it's quite nice to have a safe platform online, especially for BAME students, just to chat and to talk about your experiences without having to come on campus.
That was really good. And it's interesting you say that, because last week in the students' conference, Navigating Through Life as a BAME student, it was such an open space. And like there was about 45 students there. Every single one of those students spoke about their experiences. And the reason why it was such a good platform where people could be themselves unapologetically and just say how they feel was because we live in an era, like, for example, in the world right now, there's so much going on. And whether you're Black, Asian, you could always, you're able to relate to the news. You're able to feel, okay, once upon a time I have experienced microaggression, or once upon a time I experienced this. So having that platform there needs to be encouraged. And I think this was the first time the universities actually had a non-academic platform where BAME people could just say exactly how they feel, their experiences, what their concerns are with the educational system and how we can improve it. So that's something me and Declan are working closely to try and to achieve.
Can I say something as well? Sorry to jump in here. I mean, just a visiting professor, lecturer, and I've seen also students at UL. I'm teaching students now at Roehampton. I'm just kind of wondering, because BAME seems a bit of an artificial construct. I mean, there's no such thing as BAME. It was something that was created to just group everyone together and, you know, find some kind of expression, but maybe a more nuanced approach and understanding what different groups really want, and then cater to their needs, because I'm sure that the needs are quite different between East Asian versus South Asian students and Black students versus local or foreign students. So I had a number of international Black students, and I know so African students, and I know they had lots of different challenges from the local Black students, and just kind of you know, dealing with those and what type of support you can give. So in terms of placement for them, you know, especially for international students that don't have a network, for them it was super challenging. And also, how do you do interviews and things like that? Of course, you know, local students will have similar challenges, but I think they're just a different world, really, if you come from outside and, you know, haven't actually lived in the UK and you don't understand how things are working. So I'm wondering.
Sorry, we have 1 minute left in this breakout room, and I just wanted to tell you, I agree with you. As a BAME, I learned the term acronym BAME at university. And a lot of people, so for example, an Asian girl I interviewed for my project, she said, I don't really define myself as BAME, and nor do I. I am Black African. That's how I define myself. It's like saying white and other. Yeah, that acronym needs to be dismantled, really. So we've got 1 minute left. Thank you everyone for participating, engaging, good recommendations. Thank you for speaking and listening to me. So yeah, if you have any further questions, we've got Q&A next. Please just ask your questions. Thank you. So hello everyone, thank you for participating in our breakout room. In my breakout room, we had a very good discussion, great recommendations were given, and now we have a question and answer time. So following everyone's breakout room, if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask, please feel free to ask them now.
I'm just wondering whether we've got everybody back from the other breakout room. We do. Okay, that's great. Lewis, I can't
Can I
see.
ask a question about the space? So was there in your findings, were there any discussions about the space available to students sort of in between timetabled sessions? So all those interspaces of social spaces on campus, study spaces, places where you can go when you don't have something timetabled. Was there any discussion of that?
Yeah, that's the concept of sticky campus, creating a space for commuting students. So for example, students that live on halls obviously got their residence to go back to after their lessons, whereas commuting students often don't. They have to hang around until the next lesson. So creating that space where it's like their home, whether they're there for an hour, 20 minutes. So that's the whole purpose of this conference today, because that does increase sense of belonging. That's their space to relax when they know, like when they're not going to lessons.
Can I just add a little bit, just a few words to what Guerdine said? There's a lot of emerging research on this whole issue of what to do with physical spaces. It's a particularly live topic in Australia and this country. There is more and more people giving active thought to it. And I mean, I think perhaps if Christopher's available, he could add some words after me, but because I know that Southland in particular and Gulliver as well, they've done a lot, given a lot of thought to this. It is a question of having a variety of different spaces and also making spaces flexible in the sense that one space may be used for a particular purpose during the day, but it's completely different in the evening or something like that. But there's also a need to provide a purpose for what people are doing between sessions. It could be maybe a game of ping pong, it could be purely recreational, but it could also be an opportunity for them to pick up or dip into something completely new. So there's a lot of potential solutions. So that's the whole sort of research agenda of the sticky campus. It's the idea, just like digital stickiness, it's getting people to stay on site longer and to feel they belong more. Yeah.
Thank you, Declan. Does anyone else have any questions they would like to ask?
Christopher's got a question. I've noticed a couple of questions in the chat as well. Guerdine, if you've got a minute to. Christopher, over to you.
It's not a question, really, just a follow on from what Declan was saying. You know, we're in the process at the moment as media, culture and languages are moving into their new building down at Southlands, thinking about how we can create spaces which students want to be in, but which also offer them the resource to achieve what they want to achieve during that time. So not just comfortable, relaxing spaces to hang out in, although obviously that's one side of it, but you know, what kind of facilities are needed in there? How might we think about the staff who have offices that face into those spaces? So you know, people don't need to be sought out and, you know, sort of 15th corridor on the left, you know, the 12th office, you'll then find the person you might need to talk to. How do we make sure that our well-being provision, our academic support are all really in our spaces for students as much as inviting students into their spaces. I think that's a dynamic that we're looking to shift. I think Fiona's in here, she's doing some work with us at the moment to plan what that might look like. It's a very exciting project, and so whatever data has come out of the research that could help us decide what to do, or at least to help us set a direction, that would be really brilliant, I think.
Actually, Christopher, I put a question in the chat, which was to ask people the kinds of settings, technology, and particularly staff that might need to be in these kind of spaces that would draw you to them and be useful for you.
Can I just come in on that question as well, just to I suppose from my own experience of being a BAME student, but also a BAME member of staff as well, that I think that just to expand on some of the stuff that's already been said and to allude to your question as well, Fiona, I think it's been really interesting to see how the types of spaces that students find comfortable at university has kind of changed, I think, over the years, certainly when I was back at university. And I think the library at the university has done a great job to kind of create different types of zones. So, pods that you can study within with other people, perhaps. Obviously, with the new COVID regulations, that makes life really difficult to be so close to people. Or perhaps spaces where you are allowed to, you can study on your own, but it doesn't look like you're on your own because the study space is facing a wall, perhaps, so you've got you're kind of in your own zone. And I think what would be really helpful is to not only just ask students what they might want, but actually perhaps to think about mocking up some spaces to see how people behave in them and how they respond to them, because students of different students who are residential might respond differently to those students who are commuting. Students from different ethnicities and different religions might respond differently to particular ways study space is set up. So I don't know if that's helpful feedback, but I think a place to be able to try out different either furniture or technology would be really helpful.
Could I ask, well, I did see somebody asked about the kitchens that we'd had on campus, whether there was some feedback about to what extent that had worked as an initiative.
Declan, is that question for our students?
Oh, well, sorry, Christopher, I suppose. I suppose maybe, I don't know, Christopher.
Well, it would be interesting to know if they had come up specifically in the research as something people spoke positively about. I think our experience at Southlands has been mixed, actually. There are some positive advantages to having the facilities in there, but I think we probably need to tweak what's there in order to make it more something which our students are going to use. So some facilities are getting a lot of use and others just aren't being used at all. So doing a bit of a review about what is and isn't working there would be quite important, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to say one thing just to conclude that question, that answer. Just from being a student, my observation, the students like the library. Why? Because it's a new build, it's a very open space, and it's modern, it's technology. Queen's building, we have a cafeteria. Does everyone know which I'm talking about? Often the students would be in there because they have the ping pong, they have that icebreaker activity there. However, I believe that if we did invest, then we invested and made the building modern, you would get more engagement happening there. And I think, did someone mention earlier on that having member of staff there? I believe that students don't need to be supervised in that sense. They just like having their own space. And a lot of the times the students that spend a lot of time in those spaces, the library and the building in Queens, are students who are commuting. So yeah.
Hello, did you also want to add anything that you unmuted?
No, I mean, I was literally just going to say the same thing. Like, honestly, I was about to say the same thing Guerdine said. That's also my observation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think you've got some agreement in the chat as well from Miral and from Jonathan as well. Yeah.
Can I add just a couple of words before you finish? I just really want to thank once again. I know I've already spoken to people who supported the project, namely Christopher, Gulliver, Sunita, of course, that goes without saying, but I really want to especially thank Sabia and Lewis for all the hard work they've done over the last few weeks. On this alone, they've spent so much time, but they're also helping me in the MBA and also the business school generally on a number of other initiatives. So I also must thank Eva Adams, who's also helped all along with the research as well. And this is really a collaborative exercise. So once again, as I say, please keep that thought in mind about having students as partners, but also keep in mind the idea of partnering up with Southlands and our other colleges, because they're a fantastic resource. And this event, if anything, it does show what can be done if we work in partnership. So thanks once again to everybody. Really can't thank everybody enough.
Yeah, thank you, Declan. I also want to say a special thank you to Declan, you were my supervisor throughout this, and without you, these conferences would have not been able to happen. I want to thank Shabia and Lewis. You lots have really, really helped me with the logistics of the conference. You lots have been very, very supportive. And also Apollo, thank you for also engaging and being a speaker on the panel. Most importantly, thank you to everyone that joined, that listened today, that participated, gave suggestions. And I'm just going to pass you over to Lewis, who will say a few words.
Oh, thanks, Guerdine, and it's been really enjoyable working with you and Apollo and Declan on this. Declan kind of said what I was going to say already. Just encourage all academic and professional staff to encourage students to run events, encourage students to run research, and let them know that there is the support available for them, for the help really, especially within the business school. Myself and Sabia are available to support students, and I know throughout the colleges and other departments we've got a lot of staff who are really keen to help students, so please do make students know that there is help out there for them as well. And that's it. Thanks, Guerdine.
Thanks, Guerdine. Thanks, Apollo.
Thank you, everyone. This was great. I believe we need to have more conversations, because it was a conference, but having these open conversations where people can express themselves, it was fantastic because you're able to learn and make relevant changes to it. So yeah, thank you. I hope everyone has a nice day.
Thanks, Guerdine. So we'll bring this conference to a close, and any learnings that we've taken from it we'll be able to share afterwards. In a couple of weeks' time, we'll also have our recordings on the Southlands YouTube channel as well, so do have a look out on there. And any learnings we'll be sharing as well back to all of you through the portal. I'm sure you will see our news item as well, just to kind of bring a summary or offer a summary to the conference as well. So thanks very much for your time, and I hope you will have a pleasant day ahead. Take care.